All right, man, you ready?
I
You ready to do this thing that we call a thing?
Let me get a sip of water real quick.
You can sip while we're talking.
Thank you.
It's quite all right. All right, here we go.
I'm ready.
All right. Today we have a fantastic guest, long overdue guest, John Osborne. How many times have I said, "Hey, I need to get you on the show"? Probably like 3 times.
Multiple times, and it's always been in the back of my head, like I need to do this. I need to do this. Like I've said, I'm an avid listener, so
Yeah.
this is a little surreal. So you're gonna let
Oh,
me
it's
get
all
used
right.
to it for a little while.
Well, I'll give you this weird little thing that I didn't like. So I got out of the business, at the turn of the millennia, so when I got out of the comic industry, and comic conventions were like my love. I
Oh
love
yeah.
shows, and I went to shows on and off over the years, but I wasn't sitting at a table. I was
hmm
just a guy walking around, seeing friends, saying hi.
hmm
And I went to Heroes Con last month, and I walk around, and I'm seeing all my friends, but then I see people who I've been staring at on a screen, over the course of the last 3 years.
hmm
And then I'm starting to hear people like yell out my name
Oh
because they see
man.
me, and I look over and I'm like, "Oh, you from the show," or someone's like, "Oh, I've seen you on that show," and I'm like, "Oh, this is very strange," because it's like it's going back to what it was back in comic books, but no one knows who you are drawing a comic book. So it,
If you're lucky, they might know your name, and they're gonna
right.
mispronounce it. You
Oh,
know.
poor Bill Sienkiewicz. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
the man gifted with nearly all the talent,
Yeah, oh,
and
yeah.
cursed with the name that his fandom just could never.
He needed a show name, big time.
Yeah, but then again, like nobody took the URL. Like he
That's
knew,
true.
he knew the internet was going to be happening, and he's like, nope, I'm not going to change it
There's
because
zero competition out there
there's
for that.
zero competition for his name. Yeah. And on the paper, the guys just too
Absolutely.
good for school. So John, I appreciate your hanging in there, and
Heck yeah, man.
yeah, and it's interesting because like I guess I found you through Bradley
hmm
Littlejohn,
Oh yeah,
the mad scientist that Bradley is.
yeah.
I
The entity, the
cherish,
machine.
yeah, I cherish all my contact with him. He is enlightening, encouraging, and just so cool about everything he does.
He's this like bright spot in this void
Yeah, yeah,
that is comic book making.
yeah, and he's great. And we all like sit and wait in anticipation for his magnum opus. Um,
I keep getting a hold of him. Like, I mean, can I get a peek? Just let me see what you done.
yeah,
And he's like, no,
yeah,
I'm gonna make her wait. All right.
he holds his cards close.
Yeah, I respect that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So like, yeah, and I think it wasn't. I mean, it was probably right after I had met him and talked with him that he was like, "Oh, you need to talk to John." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did the ubiquitous cyber stalking as
Yeah.
he does, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's pretty good." And then like, I mean, no joke, man, it really feels like you've leveled up in the last year. Like,
Thank you.
and I don't know like if you feel that, but that was just one of those things. I'm like, the dude's like, he's kind of crushing it. Like, this is interesting.
Thank you. I can't appreciate that so much, man. It's been just being like in the house at all times and being able to just focus on it and devote all my time to it. It
Yeah.
was always something that I spent time every day doing, but got to a point, especially in the past few years, where nothing felt the same. Like playing a video game, at the end of it didn't feel the same as completing something or making a new story. It's just nothing compared to it.
Yeah.
So in a weird way and kind of a silver lining way, the pandemic allowed for time to hone.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm listening, I was thinking while you were talking, I was like, that's like, there has to be so many people who really just took that leap.
Oh
And,
yeah.
like, I'm going to try the thing, that I've been just poking around with. And and if that, like, if you were fortunate enough and gutsy enough to say, hey, I don't know how long this is going to last. Let me try to take advantage of the time
Yeah.
I'm afforded. Like, I think it was a great opportunity to get that time into, get your proficiency levels up, walk closer to whatever level of mastery you think you have
Hmm.
or could attain. Um, and it's a blessing. I mean, and I understand that there's a lot of emotional anxiety that came along with it. So
Oh
if
yeah.
you didn't do that, it's okay. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Well, the
ruined.
whole process is just filled with anxiety. I think like that's like a key component to it or something. Like you
Yeah,
gotta have it.
it's. I mean, I think it's a pretty common thread with creative, people, is
Hmm.
there's this, like, I guess it's like, that fighting term of, bridging the gap,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like, I'm at a safe distance, that arm can't hit me, but the only way that I'm gonna get to that guy is to make myself vulnerable. And so,
Exactly.
and that's a really, nerve-wracking experience. And that's the creative process when it comes to stopping it be this thing that you do in the corner on your own,
Hmm.
do it with other people or for other people.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When it takes on that kind of broader spectrum, it just enhances everything for sure.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, enhances.
Yeah, enhance.
That's a very positive way of saying makes it way scarier.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, no, and it's nuts. And like, I think there's like, there's people who get some external support in that regard, like whether it's peers saying,
yeah.
you got to do it, you got to do it,
Mhm.
or it's a loved one who is like, I'm gonna hold your hand and walk you all the
Mhm.
way through this thing. I mean, it's great. There are a lot of different ways to do it, but it doesn't matter how you do it. It's just a matter of like going, okay, I have to get this done and out there. And
Mhm.
it's not. And I think that the weird thing is, like, for many, many years, my whole attitude was like, whatever I do is, it's just a product and it's no big deal. It's not art. Like, that was
Yeah.
always, like, my point of view about it. So drawing comic books was not this thing where I was afraid of, because it was just like, I'm making a product, and that product's going to be this sort of piece of ephemera that comes and
Mhm.
goes. And then being a designer, it was the same thing. But being a writer of, like, writing books, for some reason, that has become much more of a sense of art than it has sort of productized.
It's kind of the piece that doesn't get the attention, especially, I mean, as a kid, I didn't pay any attention to who was writing anything. It was all about the art.
Yeah,
And I mean, at the earliest ages, I couldn't even read them. It was all about the art.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you hit a certain point where you read something that like resonates, and then you're like, who was that? Who just did that to me? And then
right.
you look and you're like, "Oh, Alan Moore. Okay, I'm gonna go see what else he made." And then it opens up this like way more possibilities, way more.
And I wonder about, like, with I don't know if it's in broad generalization, but, like, with writers, like, I think that they are focused on the story. Even young people who, are focused on writing, they focus on the written word and what the story is. But I think comic book sort of artists, when they engage comic books, they sort of get a double shot of comics,
Mhm.
because they really are, like, I'll be frank, I don't think I read most of the comic books that I had as a kid. I looked at the pictures
Yeah,
over and over again. And then
absolutely.
but then I was able to go back and then, like you said, read it
Mhm.
and then go, "Oh, like, there's even more than just this amazing visual that's telling the story."
Absolutely. There's so much just going on behind it. And then, when you get to the point where you're drawing them, you see it from a whole new perspective of constructing it from that like framework first. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a so, what now, where did you grow up?
Kansas, Wichita, Kansas.
Wichita, Kansas,
Mhm.
which is that's one of the cooler names for a town.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, and initially I was raised in the suburbs of Wichita, but for the past 15, 20 years, been living in Wichita. But uh, yeah, it's a really cool art scene here. Music and art is surprisingly really popular here, and man, people love their comics here. People love
Really?
their Oh yeah, oh yeah. Kansas doesn't get enough attention for I mean, if any of the local conventions, Air Capital Comic Con,
Yeah.
um, any of the local ones, they're always pretty packed. And then you start to recognize people, and I'll be eager to get back to it. But
Yeah.
Kansans
Yeah.
love their comics.
That's really good. It's shout out to Kansas. Whoop whoop. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome. So was it? I mean, was it just you and like you and your parents, or what was the family sort of layout?
My dad worked at a oil refinery, and my mom, she was either stay at home or she had different jobs she would take. But my sister and I were kind of, I guess, a little always artsy.
Okay.
For some reason, that's what they said. My sister kind of pursued acting, and I went the art route. And I just never. My parents say I started drawing at 2 years old, never stopped.
Oh.
Man, soon. And when I saw when my parents rented Batman '89, I'd
Mhm.
been born like 2 years prior to that. Changed my life.
I'm sure.
Changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's Do you know how old you were when you saw it?
I think it had to have been months after its VHS release, which I guess famously took a while.
Okay.
Especially back then, I guess it took a long time for movies to finally make it to a VHS to rent. So I was born in '87, so two and a half probably.
Okay. All right. So really young. Wow.
I
That's
have visceral memories of running around just from the pure adrenaline, running around the coffee table at full speed to the
yeah.
intro of that movie, and I have to stop myself from doing it now. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah. It was. I mean, I was a bit older than 2.5, or however old I was. But man, that it really was quite the excitement. I mean, it was one of the first movies that I really remember a huge line for. Like,
yeah,
I honestly I don't remember a huge line for Star Wars.
really.
Yeah, my dad would just drop me off
Uh-huh.
outside of
Oh
the
yeah.
outside of the theater, and this was like, it's funny, and where the theater that I saw Star Wars was right sort of kind of below where Bill Sienkiewicz's studio was. But
Man,
I don't think at the time it was a studio because it was
that's cool.
1977, but it was just kind of funny. I'm like, oh, that's where he works. I remember years.
Hollowed ground.
I know, right? Yeah, double hallowed, right? It's
Yeah.
Wars and Bill. And it was like one of those things that like where he just dropped me off, and so I don't really remember there being much of a line. I was 9 years old, so or
Mhm.
how old I was. But I don't really recall any of the movies, maybe Jedi, but like none of the movies going through the 80s, I really felt I had this sort of like big sort of opening night kind of vibe.
Mhm.
And I remember going to see Batman like with my girlfriend,
Mhm.
and it was just this like huge thing. Like it was
Yeah.
just huge. Yeah. And
I didn't know it was. I'd always heard like it was a big release. I
Mhm.
didn't know the phenom that it was when it released. It was like they said Titanic, times 10. The bat symbol was everywhere,
Yeah.
apparently. Like,
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal, and at the time, I remember that, following that movie, MTV did a big promo about giving away the Batmobile to somebody, like a big,
oh really?
stakes thing or whatever it was, and, that was just, like, mind-blowing that, like, someone could get that thing.
I'd like to know what they actually got, Like, was it just a prop,
I don't.
one that didn't move, or
Yeah,
was it one of those that, what do they call it, like the hero car that they
right.
would do close-ups on and stuff? I doubt
Yeah,
that.
yeah, who knows? Maybe the industry wasn't savvy enough at the time to realize, like, just give the prop away versus, like, "Yeah, here's the one with the V8 in it, and you can drive
Yeah.
around,"
Oh, man.
you know?
You make that mistake once.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, yeah, oh, that's cool. Yeah, so I mean, like, it's interesting that those sort of points and sort of our lives or whatever the thing is that sort of like kind of kicks our head open and makes you go, whoa, there's more, there's a bigger thing or whatever it is. Um, that's pretty cool. So I guess that you attribute that movie with sort of putting sort of superheroes and the idea of that comic book world into your soul.
100%. It
Well,
it gets, I think, sole, responsibility because I saw the movie and I became obsessed. Uh, and then my parents were like, "Well, there are things called comics,
Mhm.
and man, he's been in a lot of them." So they get me a few of them, and that's when it started. And
Wow.
then after that, I I just focused on Batman for
Yeah.
years. Didn't even look at anything else. No, at the time where I was living, no comic book stores really close or anything. So it was what you could find at the store at the end of those
Yeah.
aisles. And man, Neil Adams Batman, that's what it was. And it was man, the Batmobile. I can still remember. I can't remember the exact whole page, but I remember there was one panel that had his Batmobile just tearing down the road, and I can still see it.
Yeah.
I wish I need to figure out what issue that was, but
Yeah, I remember, like, I thought one of the great things about, Neil Adams's Batman was his Batmobile because he kinda made it this kind of muscle car kind of vibe thing, and
yeah,
which they brought into the Batman movie, which I thought was just so exciting.
absolutely.
Yeah, that was a kind of cool thing. I mean, he was very, like, it's so funny because I mean, those people are our forefathers in the comic
Mhm.
book
Oh
world.
yeah.
We don't look at that, we don't think of them historically as, young people but they were young people when they were making these comics that we
Mhm.
all know them for. And so, like, yeah, of course, he's gonna make it a muscle car, of
Yeah,
course he's gonna do all these amazing things. And it's like, yeah, yeah, awesome, and we get all this stuff to stand on.
absolutely. I mean, he took it from a not I wouldn't say a clown car, but something kind of comical looking,
Mhm.
and made it this like predatory creature.
Yeah.
As predatory as Batman was on the road, it was equally as menacing. And I think he definitely, like you said, started that trend.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, it's funny because he did, I don't know the timelines, but he did a whole bunch of covers for, Tarzan, uh,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
which are some of the greatest, painted covers for a book.
absolutely.
And, like, I want to believe that he did those before he did Batman, and he was like, "I'm gonna make Batman like this hunter in a city kind of
hmm
look," which that's what it felt like.
It's interesting to, like you said, when you start following these creators, and then you see the kind of what they learned, what like taking from Tarzan, and then making him kind of predatory like that. So many artists do that. I mean, the things that I've learned bleed into the next project.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's I mean, it's very cool. I can't remember who I was talking with not too long ago, but it was the whole idea that, like, you know, you bring as much of the outside world as you can into your comic book work.
hmm
I mean, into anything you make. I mean, like, don't like if you like, thriller novels, don't only read thriller novels and then write a thriller novel because it
exactly.
might
Yeah,
just be pretty derivative of the thriller novels versus
absolutely.
reading history or whatever the thing is that you're reading and then really get into it, because I think that's where we it's just those sort of random particle collisions that create the new molecule that we kind of want in our work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, all right, so you were like not too dissimilar to so many other comic book artists, is that you're just making drawings and that did you recognize, like, is there a point, like, when you recognize a sort of a difference between you and maybe, other kids or friends of yours?
The only the earliest memory I have, I guess I can just base on the attention that it got, was in school. I think it was maybe first or second grade, and an art teacher, as they do, they look around and peer over the shoulder, and she was happy with something I did. I can't even remember what it was, just some illustration, and it just kept going from there. Uh,
Mhm.
art teachers were usually, uh, you know, very happy to, see you, except I had one, and he was probably my best one. He was my high school one. His name was Mr. Kent too. And man, he was nice to everybody but me. you know, like, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? You're the first art teacher doing, like, what's going on here? And but he'd every once in a while he'd drop these like gems of information on me that I still use, like how to frame an image and how to draw what, not what you remember, but what you see. Just all
Mhm.
these like little gems that I think people have to wait till college to get. And never a single compliment. All 4 high school years, not a single compliment. And he's complimenting all these other people. And I'm just like, what am I doing wrong? And the last my last year, like the last few weeks of my senior year, he we had he started a comic book class, and
Oh,
so I got to take that, and that was a lot of fun. And my entry didn't get put into scholastics because it was deemed a little too violent, and
okay.
but he liked it so much he still put it up in the, like, where all the scholastic stuff went anyway. He's like, screw
Okay.
them, it's good, they don't know. And that was like one of the that and him saying the last day of my art class, last time I ever saw him, uh, before I left, he's like, "Hey, the first $1 million you make goes to me." I'm like, "What? Where was this? Where was this for 4 years?" But
Well, I guess, I mean, the thing is that, like, not everyone who takes an art class is going to pursue that vocation or whatever,
mhm,
whatever it is, or any of the classes. So I think a teacher, like, has to, like, figure out how that they're going to manage, these 20 plus,
yeah,
students in the class.
absolutely.
And you may not have required as much sort of instruction,
Mhm.
and more that you may just needed some guidance.
Oh
Rather,
yeah.
like, hey, and then, he drops a breadcrumb and you go chasing after that breadcrumb.
Mhm,
And maybe that was his method, which was sort of like, make him want to get something from me versus, because what is he, because what he could do is, and maybe he saw it was like, if I compliment the kids who are good,
mhm.
they may take their foot off of the accelerator.
It was only later in life that I started thinking about that because I was by far and away not the only talented artist in that school. We
Mhm.
had, a handful of us, and he was the same way with all of us. So we were like, okay, it's not because he doesn't like us. And he would never like mean to us or anything like that.
Right.
It was just he was little less complimentary,
I mean, the thumbtacks on the chair was a little much, but,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It was a different time.
no judgment. No, I think that's the kind of thing that because I mean, he has to do a lot of hand holding with the people who just don't even
Mhm,
know which end of a brush or a pencil to pick up. Like it,
mhm.
and that's so. I mean, as a teacher, you're like, okay, I just got to get, and so maybe he needs to inspire the people who need all that inspiration, and he
Yeah,
can just kind of be like, okay, listen, you like, that's cool, but like, you missed, you may want to focus on your perspective next time. And you're like,
absolutely.
oh wait, like, and our mind is like, why isn't this going up on the fridge wall of the classroom?
Mhm.
I'm not, like, aren't I better, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, and I mean, especially at that age, you're so competitive,
sure.
that, it, but like I said, later on in life, it made a little more sense, and I
Yeah.
get it now.
Yeah, we had a great high school teacher, and I apologize, Mrs. Hannah, because I was never very attentive in
Uh-huh.
her class. But she churned out so many, like, top, like, so many people, like my like, so the way our school was set up was we'd have our own dorm room, but we shared a second room as a studio.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, it was a pretty cool setup. And my studio partner was a kid who graduated with me.
Hmm.
We neither one of us knew we were going to be there. Like, it was just this totally random thing. And
Whoa. What are
another
the numbers on that? What are the
yeah,
statistics for that?
and another kid was right down the hallway, and he graduated with us as well.
Man,
And then, like, a girl who was 1 year behind us went to Cooper Union, which is this really, like, great art school in Manhattan, which
man,
is free tuition. Like, if you get in, you don't have to pay a dollar. And,
all
like,
audition.
so it's super, super, like, so, like, in that short period of time, like, she churned out, like, 4 people who went off to art school in New York City, and all of them, I mean, all of them pursued art, like to one degree or, to one degree or another in
Yeah.
different fashions. Yeah.
Mold
Agreed.
makers.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Don't get enough credit.
she was great. She was great. I mean, I wish I was a better student to her, but I learned
Mhm.
a lot in her classes.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
that's the best way to honor them, you know?
yeah, yeah, sure. Keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, because I mean, I don't know. For me, I always felt a little bit on the outside because of my drawing, and not like a weirdo in that sense, but it just wasn't what everyone else did. So like in the art rooms, you were, oh, you were one of the good, you know, kids,
Mm.
meanwhile, like in the other classes, the kids who were really, paid attention in, in math or English were the good kids.
Oh, see, that's where I totally fall off
Yeah.
fell off was it was, my math was absolutely terrible.
Yeah. So it was kind of it's kind of a weird thing, and like, and I never really felt that there was much recognition. Not that I was looking for recognition, but there was very little recognition of that ability
Mhm.
until like right at your end of your senior year, and then like I guess because the student body has to get things done, whether it's like a float or something, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you know how to do this kind of stuff,"
Oh,
And you're like, "Oh, like you're paying attention to me. Okay, sure,
mhm.
I'm on board," which is the weakness of all artists. Like, hey, you know what? It's a good exposure for you to do this for us for free.
Man, especially early on. Man, so much exposure.
I know, all this exposure. I should wear some sunblock.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so did you study past school, or did you go off and do something else? Did you go to college? What was the course?
I went to like a year of college, took some art courses, and then after that, just continued kind of my self education in
Yeah,
the business. Took some jobs in the automotive industry for a while learning and going to conventions and trying to get my book out there, uh, and to the point where it was kind of like I had to leap from what I was doing, and there's like no safety net, and uh, I think that's what did it was having to jump without. I always kind of it reminds me of the scene in The Dark Knight Rises, where the only time Bruce Wayne can jump onto that rock is when he's taken the rope off, because
right.
that fear or
Yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
I think there's a little bit to that, and was able to move into it, full time. So.
So, well, so I mean, there's an interesting sort of like kind of sort of a pivot right there, because I mean, you went off to school, and I mean, when you went off to like that the year of college, I mean, was your mindset saying like, okay, I'm going to go learn all the things I can learn from, better art teachers to
Mhm.
be able to get skill set to be able to do, was comic books the sort of the end goal for you, or was it something?
Oh, it from high school, I knew
Okay,
what
all
I
right.
was gonna do. What the plan was to go to college and take all the art classes in
Uh,
1 year and then leave. So I
right.
learned like, no credits, no real credits or whatever, but, I learned a lot, and take all that and then use that to, starting to create some IPs and some stories and then go to conventions and just grew
So,
from there.
so let's see. So this is what, late 2000s.
It would have been college would have been 2007. I graduated in 2006.
Okay.
So the year of 2007, 2008,
Okay.
took all the art classes and then dropped out and then got the job to pay the bills while I did more going to what I called YouTube University and
Sure.
just absorbing everything
Well,
I
okay.
could.
So that's also really early, because 2007-ish was it 5 or 7 was when YouTube started.
Hmm.
So
Oh
there's
yeah.
not a ton of content out there, and
Oh no.
whatever there is isn't very polished at that point. Like,
Oh no.
it's 300 DPI camera, or like, I mean, super, super like low
It
res.
was bad.
Yeah,
It was
not
bad.
DPI, but like pixels. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so I mean, but like how like there's that's an interesting, so like I mean, so the goal is kind of locked in. Now,
Hmm.
was the goal like, because for me the goal was, you know, pencil for Marvel and DC. That was it, and
Hmm.
any of these sort of ancillary, sort of, you know, dark horse image, kind
Hmm.
of people out there, but like I didn't have that sort of like I'm going to make my own comic book, which was really like a regret of my youth. I'm like why I didn't sort of, and I had tons of them.
Oh yeah.
I didn't have this sort of like desire because I wanted to play with their toys. I wanted to go draw those other characters.
Hmm.
And so like were you focused on one thing or were you focused on the like multiple opportunities and in directions?
That's a great question, man. It was initially it was I want to draw Batman. I want to draw
Okay.
Spider-Man. And then I got into the kind of convention scene um, with my own book, and looking around, you see so many incredible stories by independent creators, and I my first convention, I get this stack of comics that you could probably only get in the Wichita metropolitan area. They're not going too much further, but these things are incredible. The writing, when they're good, they are good, and
Yeah.
that's what kind of gave me this new target for just create my own stories. I have more fun in those worlds anyway.
Mhm.
So
That's so cool. Like, I mean, that's a I wrote about that in a recent newsletter, and this it's this huge sort of thing. Like, I had this very like sort of poo poo attitude about sketchbooks
mhm.
and writing.
Yeah.
And it was this really strange sort of attitude that like I'm like, well, I can draw. I can draw for Marvel. Like I
Mhm.
don't need to sit and work in a sketchbook. Like I would see my friends all drawing in sketchbooks and I was like, why are you drawing? Like just shut the machine off and then enjoy your time off,
Yeah,
And when you have to
exactly.
sit down at the drawing table, turn the machine on,
Mhm.
draw the page. And what I didn't recognize was the people who play like in the NFL
Mhm.
don't walk off the field on Sunday afternoon, kick up their feet for a week, and then take a bus to wherever they have to go for the next game, later
Mhm.
in the weekend. And I'm like, oh, like it is the hardcore practice that keeps you going. So when you do hit the page, you're not getting beat up because it's a
Absolutely.
grueling process drawing a page.
It always kind of reminds me of uh, Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about when he was just as much as he was training, he went and got like posing techniques from ballerinas
Mm,
to learn what poses show off, the work he's done the
right.
best and are the most kinetic and stuff. And it's just like that was his life, you
Yeah.
know, absolute life.
Yeah. No, and I think, and so like people like, my friend, and colleague, John Paul
Mhm.
Leon, like that dude drew all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And it shows. Like, and it's not that he's drawing these characters with all this definition and musculature.
Hmm.
It's reality. He's drawing reality on
Absolutely.
the page, and it's this amazing thing, but it's because he is soaking up and like we said earlier, like getting all that information from outside of comic books and
Oh
pulling
yeah.
it. And that was like such an amazing sort of revelation to see that. And like, and so I go, oh man, I really wish I did that. But how did you like being a person who was sort of like with pencil in hand, kind of a person, how did you go like, oh, I'm gonna write my story? Like, because that's like did you think about it or did you just go like, okay, the only way I'm going to get a comic book is if I just make a story up and put it on paper? Like was it
It's pretty much it. The
really?
missing component was the script.
Yeah.
So at the time, the only option was to produce it myself, and I did, and I found how I realized how much I enjoyed that process.
Oh,
Almost
cool.
equally the narrative process and the art form that it is. Uh, that one I didn't realize I was going to be as entranced by. You know.
What was your, I mean, what was your, we'll use the term loosely, but what was your writing process when you put together that first script? Because that's an interesting thought.
I thought about the story while at work for like 8 months
Okay.
without writing anything down,
Oh,
and
excellent.
then yeah, and then wrote like a novel-sized breakdown of just what I saw in my mind chronologically, and
Uh-huh.
then went through and tried to break all of those sections down into pages and
Okay.
panels,
Yep.
and basically it's the same thing I do now. I haven't deviated much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I mean, it is interesting. Like, so there's this thing, and I don't know. I only heard it in the in sort of the competitive shooting world, and there's things they call training scars. So like you learn how to do something,
Mhm.
and you can do it, but the way you learned how to do it, or self-taught
Oh,
yourself, is not the sort of the correct procedure.
oh yeah.
And the end result might be a successful end result, but
Mhm.
you are actually, holding yourself back because you're holding your hands in a certain way or whatever the thing is.
Mhm.
And so that kind of stuff and that applies with everything. It
Oh,
applies
yeah.
with anything that we do. And so it's interesting how, unless somebody comes along and sort of coaches you in how to break you of whatever training scars you have, we sort of work these sort of techniques until we stop working.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, because listen, I'm a huge proponent of just the brain dump. And
Uh-huh.
I
That's
mean,
exactly what it is. Yeah, lore dump.
I can remember writing out like scripts, and I called them scripts. I mean, it was just one gigantic paragraph, multi pages, and then I would take a pen and I would block it, like you would see the line zigzag across
Yep,
paragraphs to
yep.
say, okay, well, this is a page, or this is a scene, or whatever I would do to
Mhm.
put it down. And it was a relatively effective technique to at least get the idea out. There's this cartoonist, Howard Taylor, and he calls it, I don't know, like he calls it like the 12-year-old boy explaining his favorite movie technique.
Okay, okay.
So
Yeah.
so when you're writing, you sort of just write and go, and then, and that other thing that happened,
Yep.
I said earlier, that this, like, you just keep dumping all this stuff out.
Mhm.
And that's drafting. Drafting is, we don't care what it looks like. The goal is to
Absolutely.
get all that stuff out, and then you can take it and then put it all in a proper order, break it up,
Refine it. It's
and
that
it's
ore that you just break free, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so that's really cool. So, you basically took the 12-year-old and yourself and
Mhm.
put it out, and said, "That's how
You're in
you."
control now.
Yeah, and you let that 12-year-old tell that story that was spinning in your head at
Mhm.
work for 8 months, and you put it down. And did you then break it onto different pages, or did you just work off of that sort of that master block?
Yeah, just kind of, like a piece of clay had this large, unrefined piece that just carved from. I knew I had certain segments in it that while I guess you could call it just fantasizing about it or just,
Mhm.
daydreaming about it. These shots that I kept seeing, they would, keep coming to me. I would write them out so I didn't forget them and try and place them
Yeah.
chronologically. But I, yeah, definitely from that kind of like larger chunk and then just piece by piece.
So when you did that first, um, self-produced book,
Hmm.
like, to that point, like, what had you done on a page? Had you spent like 2 years making samples, or
Hmm.
what was the sort of the John Osborne, oeuvre at that point?
Where I got like, yeah, the this kind of school of hard knocks was I can't remember the website name. But it was a website where you'd make a original character
Okay,
and you would battle them against other people's original characters.
that
And
sounds really familiar.
if I could just
Yeah. No, no, it's okay.
Void, it was called Void,
Okay.
and that's where my character Blackbird, back when I was writing that, was generated. And so they'd put you in this ladder with these other creators and like a tournament, and
Mhm.
you'd have a week to produce the I think it's like 6 pages, and it didn't have to be colored, but there's no rules against it. And
Okay.
then people would vote on who won, who
Okay.
they thought was the better story, better art, all that, and that would be
Mhm.
considered void canon. I
Okay.
thought that was revolutionary. I thought that was so cool. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth in exposing sequential art and story of mine to other people.
And so what were your pages like? What were you drawing full size, 10 by 15? Were you drawing on smaller, like to get the pages done in 6 days? Like what was your,
I was drawing them on physically, traditionally, and inking them traditionally,
right?
and then I'd scan them and then attempt at the time. It's pretty early. Attempt to color them. Uh, Not very great, but you got to start somewhere. Um, so that was, and I would be lucky if I managed to color the entire thing. Most of them and most of everyone's ended up as black and white. But
Yeah. Okay. And you felt your color might have given you a little bit of an upper hand.
I wanted it to. I don't know if it always did. You
Right.
know.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it was always that kind of thing, like where like, well, I don't know if my book report's pretty good, but I'll draw this really great illustration for the cover of the book report
Exactly.
to try,
Yeah.
so like whatever
And
you
man,
could.
they were ruthless. They were ruthless. They were like, "Oh, the art's really good, but this story don't make any sense." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah,
they took care of it.
it's we used to for our students at this design school that I taught, um we would do what we call the logo Thunderdome, and we would take the design students and then pair them off, like, okay, you're half here, and then they would have to produce somebody, each one would have to kick someone forward, and we would take the yellow pages and then sort of fan it and drop it,
Oh,
and then each person would stand above it with an X-Acto blade and then just drop it, and
yeah.
wherever it landed on the yellow pages, you had to create the logo for that
Oh
company,
my god.
and you had 1 minute to do it.
That's a great exercise, man.
So, yeah, so we sort of made this sort of, same sort of bracket tournament thing with the logo
Mhm.
Thunderdome to get people. But what I found, that learning, that like that really condensed moment of time where you say, okay, I've got to come up with something,
Mhm.
and you hammer it out. So 6 days to do six, or a week to do 6 pages
Mhm.
is a lot of work, but it's like you got to get it done.
And when I, first read the rules, I was like, man, that's doing the math on all the process, like that's going to take a lot of time. And then I remember, and I don't remember the specific issue of Wizard,
Right.
but I was an avid reader of Wizard, and they had a segment in it where one of their editors, I think, or their writers went to Image for their deadline night. And it was like this overnight sleepover. And
Hmm.
he had this like a Barbie sleeping bag and his robe, and it just showed the process of, you want to see what it looks like to finish a comic on deadline. And it was all these now famous artists and writers just miserable, just soulless, trying to work this thing out.
Yeah,
And I was a little younger when I saw that. I'm like, kind of an indicator. And so when I saw how much work was involved, I'm like, well, I think that's just part of the business.
sure.
you know
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, that's super interesting. I'm so surprised that, like, it's so interesting how things like in the internet have their time and then they go away, and like for some reason they never return. Like
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, at least that's my experience, but that thing seems like it could return and people could, like, I don't know, like
I'm
get,
surprised, and it could very well. I just haven't visited
maybe it's
in
still going.
years.
Who
It
knows?
could very well still be going, but it was just such a unique idea, and I'm surprised we didn't see a ton of offshoots. It was
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, ugh, I mean, there's also the barrier to entry. I mean, like, like there, had someone created like a platform for
hmm
for a very sort of open-ended thing, then you may have had a ton of people doing it
yeah,
versus this sort of like, hey, we've created a website, and then someone's like, I don't know how to make a website. I don't know.
exactly. And as far as barrier for entry, it was a lot like they didn't tell you how to. There was forums that you could go to if you needed help
Right.
figuring out how to do something, but they're like, have these pages, uploaded by this time. That's it. And if you can't do that, then that's barrier for entry.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's, I mean, well, and I think that's, that's, I mean, I guess that's the same thing with so much stuff. So, I mean, so how many of those things do you think you completed before you said, I'm going to do my own thing?
I think I took part in like three or four of them,
Okay.
and then I saw like the potential in the character and my own writing, and was kind of ready to jettison myself. from that so that I could focus on my stories and not stressing about that Sunday and if all this work I did is going to be considered canon,
Right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, the cool thing is that like I think another thing is like I think it's really important when we find that moment of acceptance, like wherever we find it, like outside of sort of a whatever small circle of, that you grow up within,
Oh yeah,
you
your
get,
nuclear support.
yeah,
Other than that,
like getting out there to that next level of sort of like acceptance is really kind of a huge step in, because like, okay, well, like I made this little thing, I put it out there and it didn't sink. So I guess I
exactly.
could go a little further with this, and you take the next step. Now, had you tried to send samples into publishers at this point, or were you just kind of no?
No, I knew at that time that
That's
in order for the image I was trying to convey to look even close to what I wanted, I would be, penciling it, inking it, and then doing my version of coloring on it. And at the time, none of those strengths by themselves were strong enough to, I felt, put them in any kind of portfolio or try.
right.
It was only until a few years later that I started sending, building stuff to send into like 2000 AD and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But
Yeah, yeah. That's. I mean, it's interesting. Like, when the level of work it takes to get whatever that skill set is, whichever one you choose,
hmm
to the level where you're like, okay, I think this is the thing that they're going to pay attention to.
hmm
It's a ton of work, and it's really,
oh,
really like hyper focused work.
and it's sometimes not the one you expect.
Yeah,
I always my weakness was always color, until I was like, I have to learn this. And after that, that's what gets mentioned the most easily is the
yeah,
color.
you got a really cool coloring style
Thank you.
technique. Um, and yeah, I mean, go check out John's. I guess you're all on Instagram, so like,
hmm
that's where
Yeah, I have a website too.
yeah.
It's not updated or anything yet, but maybe it will be by the time this airs.
Yeah, maybe so. That's why I'm like, you know what? Everyone seems to be like, unless there are people who are like obsessive updaters on their website, which is not very many people. I'm like,
Not
well,
anymore.
social media seems to be the best thing to put, to spread
hmm
around. So, yeah, it's. I mean, it's a tough thing to do that. I was talking like, so Mark Morales is a phenomenal inker,
hmm
and I went to college with Mark, and I remember, and I said to him not too long ago, I was like, Mark, man, if I knew you were going to be this good of an inker, like I would have dragged you into Marvel with on my first assignment, saying, hey, get this guy to ink the thing, and
Oh yeah.
never have let him out of my sight because he's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
so good. And he's like, I didn't know I wanted to be a penciler, like,
hmm
'cause he just, but his skill set really shined when he had a pen and a brush in his hand, and
hmm
it took off. And so this guy became one of the preeminent inkers of a generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wasn't what his path was intentional. He was got to work, and
And
everyone.
it's whatever one, seems to be garnering the most attention, is obviously the one you want to throw your, cast your net in. Uh,
It's tough, but it's tough. It's so tough. Like, so let's just say, like, let's do a like a challenge here.
mhm,
Let's say like your coloring is so cool, and you get a call
mhm.
from a publisher saying, "Hey, we're really interested in having you work on a project," and you're like, "Oh," and then they go, "Yeah, we want you to color this."
Yeah,
Like,
sign me up. That'd
okay,
be
yeah,
great.
yeah, but I mean, but a lot of people will be like, "No, but I want to be this," like,
Mhm.
and it's great that you're just sort of like, boom, yeah, I want to do that.
I always think of Mike Mignola. He's a legend now, but he
Mhm,
started as an inker.
mhm.
You gotta, you know, never say no to an opportunity. Not, I guess never, but in this business,
Right. If it involves candy in vans, don't do it.
yeah, right, or exposure.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No matter how good the exposure is supposed to be.
No, maybe if DC was like, we're not going to pay you a thing, but you'll get your name out there. They're the only one that'd be like, once. You
Right.
can do it once. Probably shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll edit that part out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, but that's great that you'd be willing to take that sort of thing to say, listen, because your goal is to work in the industry, wherever you can,
Hmm.
and do the things that you want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is that coloring isn't what it was when I was drawing comic books, which
It's a
was
whole different world.
it wasn't even markers back then, John. It
No,
was
it
it,
was
it
like,
was it was it was Dr. Martin dyes that you would paint on Xerox paper prints
yeah.
and then hand code. Like it was.
I remember one time Wizard went through it. They
Oh,
went.
okay.
It was at the end of that process, and they're
Mhm.
like, and now the coloring, and they get to it. I'm like, okay, great, cool. I'm gonna get to learn how to color comics, and it's just all these machines and these like sheets of transparent, like red, green, blue, yellow, and I'm like, I'm never gonna learn how to color.
It's so funny. It's very much like this math problem. Like it was
Yeah.
because you had to understand those basic 25% quarter percentages of the spectrum, and just be able to go like, okay, well, this is going to look like this with this. You could not even fill a single color out, but just mark every section up, and you
Yeah.
send it in, and it would end up that the way you want it.
Man. See,
Yeah,
that's I'm definitely glad it got to a point where we can just do it physically, like digitally, and
yeah,
see it. Because I don't think I ever would have been willing to put in the time to learn how to be colors that way.
right. Because like we had gradients, but we could say like going from like R2B3 to R1B2, and you put an arrow, and they would make the gradient, but you didn't have control where that gradient.
It's like painting by numbers, kind of.
Oh, it was very much like painting by numbers, but and it was cool. And listen, it was what comic books were, so we weren't going like, this sucks. It was like
Yeah.
this was the top of the food
Yeah,
chains.
you're getting a color comic. Can you
Yeah,
believe it?
I got and then I ended up coloring a couple of friends like pieces, like like for it. But then it was like, then they're like, oh, you can use markers. I'm like, you can use markers, and they're like, yeah, and you don't even have to code it. You can just put what you want down, and they'll match it. I'm
Oh
like,
my god.
they will, it was just, it was like this sort of revolution of change
Oh.
within like 2 years, and then the digital side started coming in like nicely, not the 90s digital stuff, but
Oh man.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it
A
was
dark time.
it was not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so you do it, and you make your book, you
Mhm.
make this comic. How did you go about making it? What was your process? Because I mean, I'm really curious about, because there wasn't a guy who wrote it and is sort of waiting for the artwork to be done. There wasn't a publisher saying, hey, this was you. So how long did it take you? What were you thinking? How many times did you quit? Like all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. The first actual stab I took at like an independent book was Frankenaut, and it was a 6-page ash can, basically.
Okay.
I toned it so it wasn't black and white. It did have black and white in the panels, but it did have an element of color in it.
Okay.
But there was only 6 pages to basically get the proof of concept out there, and it came from, at the time, I was just trying to build a website, like a portfolio website,
Okay.
and I was trying to think of something to use for like a mascot, or just some image, a ubiquitous image to keep using, to interact with patrons and stuff like that. But I started kind of like colliding different genres, and like I've always loved the old horror movies, Frankenstein, Mummy, all those, and then a massive love for sci-fi. So I was just colliding these ideas, and I came across there's some bad ones, mummy robots, stuff like that, things that maybe could work, I don't know, with enough time, but nothing that had any kind of gravity to it, until I thought of Frankenaut, astronaut, Frankenstein, put it together,
Yep.
Frankenaut, and then it was boom. It just this image hit immediately, and I could see him. And I have an image of it all I'll send it to you. He doesn't look very different from now versus what he looked like in his original concept. And then I'm like, okay, I have this image. I have this really cool kind of look. Now I need a story. So I spent probably the next 3 months trying to build a story out of it. And I got the idea kind of from, I always used to play with crash test dummies. I don't know if you remember those. I actually have one on my desk. If you don't remember them,
Oh wait, that was a toy, right? They're from
oh
like
yeah,
cartoon.
oh yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so the deal with these things is they got these buttons. You can put them in these cars, wreck the car, they blow into pieces.
sure.
Kind of like a real interesting physics kind of game, and it gave me the idea of this being that against his will was kind of in a way put into gladiatorial like tests for an alien version of Amazon. You know, if Amazon was in the business, like Raytheon or something, in the business of military arms, and they needed beings to test those arms on, the stories about these beings. And it's kind of like NASCAR mixed with Gladiator, mixed with uh, every commercial you've ever seen.
Hmm.
And so after I had that, I knew, okay, this is something I haven't seen yet in a comic, and it fits what's going on because the idea of this Frankenaut character is he can be, almost totally blown to pieces and brought back, just all the
Yeah.
pieces regenerated, put back. So I knew basically at that point the story becomes the tests, and the story becomes, the world he lives in. And then within 2 issues of writing it, I realized, oh, the story is actually about everything else. And so, but that's probably the process, and that was the first one. And I haven't, like I've said, deviated too much from that process.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty. So, I mean, like, what was your? I mean, were you just sort of like full of excitement as you were doing it, so you didn't even think twice about like sharing it, or like?
Oh, like a fever. I kind of had to get this out, had to get the image out, had to get the story out, and I got it out. Made the 6-page ash can, and
Mhm.
then I would bring in co-writers from time to time to help develop parts of the world, help bring in some color, because I
Yeah,
always look to some of my favorite examples, and Mike Mignola, when he started Hellboy, he had a little help in the
yeah,
writing department, and then got his legs, and now he's uh, uh, obviously developing it himself, and so that was always the plan.
yeah.
But so I always intend to have that universe a shareable one. I don't want to get to a point where I'm just doing it myself, because you know, I mean, even in the last one, I brought Bradley in to do lettering, and he does his lettering. Bradley Littlejohn does his incredible lettering. I'm like, this is so, it's everything I ever wanted. And he's like, oh, also I was reading it, and what do you think about this? What do you think about adding this over here? And he's just kind of unlocking these from an outside perspective, unlocking these potentials in the story, and uh, so he got a co-writer credit on volume 1. It's
Yeah, no,
so
he's great. He's so great with that.
absolutely.
Yeah, he well, I mean, I mean, it's interesting. You said about Mike. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, he gets John Byrne to sort of pick up
Hmm.
and write for him. And I think
Hmm.
John, like after that first thing, he's like, listen, you don't need me. Like, it was all your thing. I just wrote scripting words
Yeah,
and
kind of the scaffolding, in a way.
yeah. I mean, and so, but the other thing is that like when you were describing the character, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about like how much of that sort of genre mashup that Hellboy is. Hellboy is monster and
Hmm.
detective.
Yeah,
Put them together, and now you have a character in a world, and now he has a purpose. So like
and
it's like
and it's something that there's like no one could have guessed on, especially for Hellboy. And in the 90s, during like the Satanic Panic and stuff, this character came out of nowhere and became this massive success,
yeah,
like
yeah,
against all odds. So
yeah.
you just
Well,
never know.
I think I think there's a very sort of there's a lighthearted spirit to the whole whole thing, especially the way that, I guess maybe the way that John initially scripted it and the way that, Mike has continued to script,
That pacing.
the pacing and the dialogue is all very sort of like tonally. It's not dark. It's not mean.
No,
It's all very sort of like light in that sense, even though it's a very dark world and dark
absolutely.
subjects. And I think that sort of that dichotomy makes the whole thing kind of come across to people like, this is fun. This is just straight up fun.
Mhm.
I'm not coming in this thing to be terrified. I'm here to be entertained. And
Yeah. And
yeah.
it did a great job of like it had like like you said, this exterior. If you were just to look at it, you're like, oh, that's going to be a dark,
Yeah.
serious book. And you read it, and they just have normal conversations that normal people have, and that juxtaposition makes it so much fun.
Yeah. No, I think it's a super, and maybe one day I'll talk to Mike about like, what his thinking was when he was putting that all together, because he might not have been thinking of that in that level.
Really.
He could have just been saying like, I really like monsters and I really want to have like a monster who is like going around like stopping other monster stuff. Okay,
Hmm.
there you go. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
It would be cooler to have a monster going around stopping monster stuff rather than a person, like, whatever. Who's the guy, the vampire hunter.
Oh, Van Helsing.
Yeah, right. I mean
Yeah.
that like it's just monster version of Van Helsing.
Hmm.
And it's like, but it's way more intriguing than Van Helsing.
Oh yeah. Something that's his ability to, I don't know. There's something about the same type of being hunting something similar to itself,
Sure.
is really
Well,
interesting.
like what is the best prey? Man.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
So I mean,
Exactly.
it really is in that same sort of mindset of that. Okay, well, this is what it is.
Hmm.
This is monster hunting monster versus man hunting man. And it's not Godzilla smashing a city apart. It's much smaller scale. Sometimes it gets big. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It changes. It depends.
yeah. So I mean, so you do the book and you're getting sort of like, I guess you're building your internal and external credibility with
Hmm.
with your peers. Your peer group's probably growing.
Hmm.
Now we're into the teens of of the 2000s. So now
Hmm.
you're kind of moving along. Technology's kind of cruising along.
Oh yeah,
Instagram's a thing. All these
absolutely.
things. More information's available on YouTube. So now you're getting, maybe that's what helped sort of elevate the coloring technique versus
Hmm.
you're like, oh, well, this is what I can do. Oh, okay, all right.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, what are you like? Did your point of view shift in what your sort of your goals are? Because once you sort of do a comic book, what do you say? Like,
Mhm.
do I just do another one, or do I try to find someone to do another comic with? Like, where is your sort of thinking, and does it change, or does it not change, or you double down?
I think it changes all the time, unfortunately. But I found after I made that first one, and the reception it got, and that I just got far more enjoyment out of that than I think I would get out of doing it, on assignment. Even though I would and I'd like to,
Sure.
I don't know if it would come with that same level of. Um, I did it. Look at what I made. You have tangible that feeling when you hold it in your hand and it's all you.
Yeah.
It that you brought this thing that was just in the ether,
Hmm.
as and focused it and made it a tangible real world object is one of the most unique feelings. And I think indie comics is the most potent version of that. So
Hmm.
I like to just stay right there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so true, because I mean, we have this breadth of comic books available on the
Mhm.
shelves that aren't the Batman and Spider-Man comic books, which
Mhm.
are awesome. They're
Oh
fantastic.
yeah, still going strong.
Yeah, but we have this breadth of comics that are out there that are just so interesting. I mean, I grabbed a whole bunch of um, you know, graphic novels like the other week. So like
Oh, nice.
like
Yeah.
I grabbed like, I don't know, like 10 different things, and I'm new stuff and old stuff, and
Mhm.
it's like, and there's just this wide array of just things that we can read, which are not, not just superheroes. There are a million different things.
Mhm.
And it's great because you can find any kind of story you want out there. And if you
Oh,
don't find the story you want, you can go make it.
that's the beauty of it, and man, good luck coming up with something that, like, is not out there. I think it's getting covered. Everyone's covering it. Like,
And we say that, but listen, they're what are 10 to 15 songs every album? And
that
how
yeah,
many albums have been made?
yeah, good
I
point,
mean, and we
good
still
point.
keep, the Gorillaz released just a new song this last week. I mean, it
Yeah,
sounds phenomenal.
yeah,
And
there's not no we're never gonna stop.
no,
Never
it's
gonna
like
stop.
I mean, I think, stories and artwork and ideas, they're like Lego, and you can build an infinite amount of things with an infinite amount of Lego.
Oh, yeah, endless possibilities.
Yeah,
I would think Stephen King, I think he had, the name of the book was On
I'm
Writing,
writing, yeah.
but where he talks about ideas being like, fossils in the ground, and you'll be walking along the sand and your foot will hit it, and then, it's up to you to get it out of the rock, and if you see it, you notice it, and you leave it, someone else might stumble upon it, and they'll do
Oh,
the rest of the work,
for sure, man. Like how many so many people I know, and myself included, like they're like, "Oh man, I had that idea."
Yes.
You know,
Oh.
and it's like, "So, oh, when did you have that idea?" "Oh, like it was like, 20 years ago." I'm like, "Well, you let it alone."
Yeah,
I
exactly,
mean, it's like shame on you. Um,
exactly.
so you mentioned something earlier about, you were working, you were thinking about these ideas and you weren't writing them down. Like would a um time traveling tip to yourself as a younger person
Oh,
be
man.
write everything down?
It would be absolutely, yeah, don't wait till everything makes sense in your mind
Mhm.
before, 'cause, uh, you will lose stuff. It's just the nature of how our brain works. You
Yeah,
can't remember everything, so, yeah, absolutely. That's something I had to learn with age was documentation.
yeah.
Man.
What else, I mean, what else would you say to yourself, your 20 to 23-year-old version of
Mhm.
yourself, with what you know now as far as your sort of your process or your approach? Like, what else would you say to yourself?
I'd probably say send stuff out whether or not I thought it was ready.
Okay.
Just get those letters saying, "Why are you sending us this? Stop, please."
Mhm.
Like, just let them get to know you.
Yeah.
I probably would have done that, and honestly, I could still use some of that advice today. So,
Well, I hope you listen. Uh,
yeah.
no, it's nobody. So, by both of those, but both of those things, that we were just talking about, both of them have, there's sort of there's a fear base in the whole thing.
Oh,
So the fear of not putting something down until it's perfect
mhm.
is a very, very common thing. There's this
Oh yeah,
whole there, and it's not just and this is not just a youthful thing. I mean, trust me, I know people who are in their 60s who are still in that
that's
sort of
good. That
mindset.
makes me feel better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this is something just that young people, everybody sort of wrestles with. And and as you said, like you're still kind of considering like, oh wait, I'm not sending enough stuff out there, and I should be sending
Yeah,
more out
I
there.
could always do more.
Right. And it's that thing. So like what we have to get over is that sort of that internal sort of thing that's saying, okay, they're just gonna either tell me to go away, they're gonna, like I had a friend, a very funny friend whose line was like, it's not like they're gonna shoot you in the face, so it doesn't matter.
That's a good
You know what
point.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
unless they're gonna shoot you in the face, you can do it, you know?
Hmm.
Like, all right,
Absolutely.
that's great advice to give to everybody and let them kind of live under that belief.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so okay, so guess what? You get next 2 weeks, you get to send 2 things out to people, and
Yeah.
you'll feel much better about.
Yeah, now I'm, like, writing stuff down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and but that's, I mean, that's the big thing, is that it is so, like, so many people say like, oh well, hey, how do you do it? Like, how do you sit and write a book? How do you write a book? And and sometimes I get tired of it, and I'm like, well, you sit in a chair and you put your hands on your keyboard and you just start pushing buttons.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
really what it comes down to. And if you find yourself not sitting in the chair, turn around, sit down, and keep typing. Like that's what it is. But I think you hit the nail on the head, which is just get it out there,
Uh-huh.
get it out there because you can fix anything. Maybe don't go right to the ink when you're trying to do a drawing. Maybe do a
Exactly.
pencil drawing and
Yeah.
then take an eraser and then maybe remove a few things that don't work.
Oh, yeah. And especially when you're coming up teaching yourself about it, you have to learn all these ways around these problems that these pros are using all the time. Like it was only until a few years ago I realized that on some comic book pages, they make a big enough mistake. They have to like cut out another piece of paper that fits and just glue it on there.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I didn't know there was sometimes that much patchwork that went
oh,
on,
yeah.
and so that made me feel a lot better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, there are. I mean, if you do peruse the original art,
Oh yeah.
table,
Oh
it's
yes.
so much paste up and like, and so many pasted up word balloons because we artists are very, very good at not being on time.
Mm.
So,
It's part of it. It's part of our charm.
I don't know how charming anybody thought that was.
Yeah.
Um, but the paste up is part of the thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it was a funny thing, and I've said it before, is that like I remember all the work it took to get into the business, as a penciler. There's this a lot of like rejection,
Hmm.
and it's very polite rejection. They're not saying
Yeah.
no, go away. They're
Yeah.
like, no, it's not ready, or this, that, and the other thing, and they gave you all these sort of detailed feedback, and you would run
Mhm.
away and you try to go, overcome that. But then you get this gig and you do your first thing and you hand it to the editor and they look at it and they go, okay, great, thanks.
And then
And
boom,
you're
boom, boom.
expecting, okay, can you change this, change that? Because for the previous year and a half or however long it's been, that's what all you ever heard was make a
Hmm.
change. And then it's like, well, and then you realize, oh, the more important thing is the deadline. The deadline is more important than the details at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's
I think that's what the way you set yourself apart in this world now, in this business, is you got to, I guess, be capable in the actual skill, but um, being able to hit a deadline,
yeah,
like,
delivery. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe it's no surprise why Amazon is as big of a company as it is that they can get you what you push a button for
that's it.
in your house, like, in 24 hours.
Absolutely, that's
And they
it.
and they're not charging you, what it would cost if you went to a website, bought the product, picked the overnight delivery service for, $128, and you get the thing delivered to you tomorrow
Yeah,
because you
exactly.
have to pay that because you were late on making the order for the thing to begin
Oh
with.
yeah,
But Amazon,
it's all about that delivery, and
it's
they
all
had it figured out.
well, it took them a long time, but they figured it out, and,
Yeah.
like, I think they figured it out and said, "Okay, we can do this." Someone hypothesized in the boardroom and said, "Do you think we could?" And then someone put the whole thing together, and
Mm.
they probably play tested it for, a few years,
Oh yeah.
and then they're like, "We can do this, and we can hit go," and then next thing you know, they blow up.
Same day. I remember being like, that no,
It doesn't make
no.
sense. Yeah. I remember, like, so there was a company in, Manhattan that it was a website and you could order things on this website and they would have people go and buy the thing and bring it to your apartment.
Oh my gosh.
So like this is like 2000, maybe 2001.
Wow.
It was like 2000.
What was
And
it called?
I have no
I have a vague memory of commercials for something like that.
Quite a bit. I mean, like, I remember the time that the PlayStation 2 or 3
Okay.
came out. Whenever one of those things came out, my
Uh-huh.
friend, we were hanging out, and he's like, "I think I wanna get one of those things." And I'm not a video game player, so I was like,
Mhm.
"Alright, cool." And so he goes onto the website to try to find one because he was just gonna buy it and have them bring it to him, like,
Yeah.
rather than, like, go outside and go find it.
The future is now.
It really was, but I guess it was kind of scalable outside of Manhattan, so I don't think
Mhm.
it didn't
Yeah,
last.
there's nothing quite like the center of that place. Like everything you could ever want within.
It's right there. And
Yeah,
I'm sure the biggest issue was that they were competing with all of the brick and mortar stores that these people were buying the stuff from, because
interesting.
they didn't have their own warehouse. This wasn't their supply. They were going to stores and buying things and then bringing them. So the stores are missing out on ancillary sales.
Yeah.
So this company is making the profit off of, the labor and the
Hmm.
opportunity, but meanwhile, you're not buying the pack of gum at the counter. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, so the stores are like, no.
Yeah. And now look at today. Now it's
Yeah.
common practice.
And then people are buying single packs of gum on Amazon just to have a pack of gum.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So, like, so you've been, so how long have you think you, let's say, because 2008 to now, so
Hmm.
that's 14 years
Hmm. Yeah.
of focus on your own stuff.
Hmm.
How many dabbles outside of your own stuff have you done? Like, have you penciled for somebody else? Have you,
Oh
you know,
yeah. Um, for the past 5 years, I've been doing the penciling, inking, and coloring of uh, it's more of a kid-oriented comic book, but it's called The Adventures of Avior by the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association. And then what they do is they focus on, like, they got a magazine and stuff.
Mhm.
They're on Oshkosh. I don't know if you've ever heard of that air venture deal they do out there, where they fly in just every type of plane you could imagine
Oh,
during the summertime, this special time, and it's really cool. Well, they're getting into, they've been for the last, I think they said something like since 1995, have been doing like a youth program to teach kids how to fly, and in every state, a little plug for the EA, in every state, there's a chapter like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and every kid between 7 and, I don't remember, I think the upper limit, I don't want to be wrong, but I think the upper limit's like 18. I can't
okay.
remember. Can get one free flight to get a flight experience. And then they've got, all kinds of different programs that they can put you through and stuff.
Oh,
And so they wanted to develop a comic book character to, have its own narrative, and also educate and keep, the idea of this, what they called it young eagles, keep that idea in people's minds. And so I did all the art for it. And I'm on, we've done 13 issues. I'm currently working on issue 14.
wow.
Yeah.
That's no joke, man.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of pages, a lot of avior.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah, it's been fun though.
I had interviewed Sarah Lavore maybe, like, I guess, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And like, her regular gig is like educational comics. Like, she does educational comics
Hmm.
day in, day out. And like, and that's a thing. Like, I think we like, it's a tool. Like,
Hmm.
people, like, comics are not just the things that are on the stands at the stores. Like, there are
Absolutely.
a broad range of them.
Yeah, we were very, when we got brought on, it was a character that came out of, I guess, the EA got from the Stan Lee Foundation.
Okay.
So it's like a donated character, and so the writer developed all the narrative for it, and we wanted it to be, like, let's limit the preaching. We want to make it a comic. Let's make it something kids really want to be
Right.
interested in, and I think we achieved that. There's one page in it called the Avior Files, where there's a history lesson or a flight
Okay.
physics lesson, something like that, and those are interesting. But everything else is strictly just a comic book, you know.
Infotainment.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I forgot the term that edutainment, I guess, is what.
I think infotainment isn't. I think you might
I
be right.
thought George Lucas created in like edutainment or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
think, like, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
yes,
Like, you're gonna learn something and watch a man with a whip. Um,
awesome.
yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's cool. That's great. So 15 issues?
This will be 14. I'm
14.
working on
Okay.
14 right now. So yeah, it's been a good run. And then while doing that, I've been doing issues of Frankenaut built up into a volume. Um, that New Friday will be releasing, to be
Oh,
determined.
TBD. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
New Friday sometime maybe this year.
Yeah, this year, definitely Frank news by November. I can
Okay.
guarantee
Yeah.
that, because it's been quiet, and I hate
How
doing that, but
how large of a thing is that
it's
gonna be?
90 pages, so it's 3 issues, and then the end, there's so many pages of concept art over the years to show kinda where it all came from.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really exciting. So how did that project come together for you?
Uh, what I gotta hand it to the Indie Comic Union. They were doing their,
Ooh,
yeah, I think it was like draw your OC, I think was what it was. Draw your October. And it was 30 days or 31 days of drawing something that had to do with your character. And so I just did, this little Frank stuff for that many days. And I got a, message from New Friday, and they wanted to know, like, what is this? Is this like, it's an actual book, And so I gave them the link. At the time I had them up for sale on Indie Planet.
mm-hmm.
So I just sent them the PDFs of the existing issues and let them know that we're in the middle of making the third one at the time. And they said they were interested, so signed with them, and then finished in the middle of being after being signed with them, finished issue 3. And now we play the waiting game. That pandemic paper shortage, man.
John, it is no joke. There are plenty of people who I've talked to, and they're all waiting
Yeah.
bated breath
Yeah.
for. And here's a crazy thing. I mean, I've been in the print side of design for 3 years, and the amount of waste that goes into printing is insane.
Yeah.
And there are at least I can think of 2 artists who have had to have their comic book reprinted a total of 4 times from their Kickstarter runs because the printers just kept messing up.
Oh no. And
So,
those are big orders.
and
So if
this
there's a mess up,
in the
man.
middle of this pandemic. So, like, you just think, like, I mean, those were 4 other comic books that could have been printed up for somebody
Oh.
else
Oh
to
yeah.
be put out in the market. And
Some other person's dream, some other
yeah,
person's comic out there.
right. And someone else got pushed back further and further.
Oh yeah.
Like, we were pretty fortunate because one of the people who did the comic for our little Kickstarter,
Yeah.
they they're running another comic company, so they have a long-standing relationship with the printer, so they were able to just go straight to them.
Well, I do want to mention, while we're on the topic, how impressed I was by that book and what you
Oh,
guys did, and how fast I got it. Like, especially during the pandemic, like, you guys announced it, made it, sent it. It was one of the most efficient ones I'd seen, and great story. The way you guys interlaced everything didn't seem forced. It seemed like
thanks.
a natural, exciting story that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Everyone's was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was super exciting to have that unfold. It was one of those sort of projects where Gary sort of said something, and I was like, all right, cool. And then he's like, will you write it? I'm like, oh, sure. So I write it, and I left enough sort of structure and framework for everyone to do their thing.
Uh-huh.
But man, like, when we would just get the art in, like, we were blown away. And, like, I mean, we still to this day will all kind of talk about Bradley's pages, because I mean,
Man,
he put so much into those pages. He
he
really.
talk about someone who doesn't leave anything on the field, like
Ooh,
everything.
yeah.
He does no rock unturned.
It was insane and beautiful. So it was a great project. Although you do remind me, I do have to go yell at Gary because he never sent a copy to one of my sisters who ordered it. So
Oh, really?
yeah, I'm not blaming him, because what he didn't probably do is look at the email that came in to say, click here and give us your address.
Well, I mean, it almost seems like it's almost part of the beast of indie comics and getting them from those websites like that, it's usually like, okay, did you send it? Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get it. It's like, okay, but when you get it,
Yep.
and you always get it,
Yep.
it just takes a
Yeah.
little longer.
It
But
does take longer. I mean, I think I haven't received 2 comics from things, and I don't care. Like, I
mhm,
mean, I'd love to have it and read them, but I'm just really want to support the people who I think are doing some cool
absolutely,
stuff and be like, whatever. I'm buying karma. That's my
there
attitude.
you go, there you go.
That's what it is. So, okay, so I mean, so you hit the sort of the digital lottery because people are looking out there and seeing people what they're doing, and you get contacted, and that's, I mean, that's amazing, and I think everyone really should be putting their best foot forward on whatever platform, however they choose to do it, because that's going to get them, someone's going to notice, like, it's going to happen.
And I always had like my own some misgivings for like certain social media and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and I had hangups thinking that it was almost like posting the stuff was almost bragging or something like that, and then you have to get over um,
Right.
that, and because I don't think that when I see any of my friends or people that I follow who are great artists, when I see them knock it out of the park, I'm not like, oh wow, they're bragging. Like that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's my new phone wallpaper. Thank you
Yeah.
for making that. So once I got over that kind of anxiety about social media and putting it out there, man, it pays back in dividends. It's
Yeah.
great.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's super exciting, and it's super exciting to share everybody's stuff. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love Twitter, is I'm able to share things so much.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not, I have, it's, Instagram doesn't let me share things, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, fine.
No, it doesn't let you leave. It doesn't let you.
Yeah, it's very strange, but so it's, I mean, it's super important. I think that, we just need to keep raising the level out there, and get that tide higher, because everyone's going to be, we're going to bring everyone with us if we just keep,
Hmm.
pushing. So what's next, dude? Um, I
Yeah,
mean,
right now,
waiting.
yeah, waiting, and as soon as information becomes clear on that, I'll be making announcements and stuff. But other than that, I'm working on. I think the path I'm gonna go is I've got two separate stories that I want to do, and I'm gonna do web comics until and
Wow.
just releasing them via the website, um, and I guess like play test it in a way, like
Okay.
and said, and see if they get any kind of attention, if people enjoy them, and if they do, continue them, and eventually, hopefully, build them into volumes to release physically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. That's a, it's so, I'm there's so many opportunities and, avenues. You could be like,
Mhm.
oh, like, you could do that as a paywall thing, and have them on
Mhm.
there, but you could also do what you're doing and then put those
That's
collections.
kind of the way I look at it because I'm going to be developing this stuff anyway. And when I'm a fan of something, I don't just get the movie of it. I bring it into my life in a way. You get the posters, all the everything to, and I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but
Well, no. I mean, that's so, I mean, there is no sort of loss in the sense. I mean,
yeah,
you can build an audience and not sort of, have them be sort of, I guess, maybe slightly distrusting because you're asking for money for this thing,
uh huh,
even if it's a low barrier to entry.
mm-hmm.
But if you're giving it away, that they're going to be more apt to kind of like say, okay, I'll dig in. And because what is it? They're just giving up, a few minutes here, a few minutes there. And
Exactly.
next thing you know, like, when you say, hey, every year you put this collected edition out,
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, I mean, hell, I always buy the trade paperback or the hardcover edition of it because I want to have that.
Absolutely. And when you feel like I mean, if you've gotten into anything early on where that creator's, just getting started or has kind of early, you get on that train 5 years later, you feel like you've helped,
Yeah,
be part of it. You've helped build part of it. And so you're invested in it as a fan.
yeah,
And so I think what I'm more interested in now so much isn't income based off of it, at least my own independent ones yet. through the web comic. It's more building that audience and
Yeah.
that the viewership, readership.
No, I think that's a big thing. I mean, that's what that cartoonist Howard Taylor did. I mean, he just kept doing his cartoon strip for probably like 15, 20 years or whatever, and
Yeah,
and that's how he makes his living. So,
absolutely.
um, so what is like briefly, like what's your, I mean, like your process, like on a page?
Hmm.
I mean, you're taking your scripts that you write.
Hmm.
I assume that they're a little more sort of structured now than they were
Oh, far better. Yeah, yeah,
10 plus years ago. Um,
absolutely.
so you are scripting out on paper and then going at it as a penciler to your own writing.
Hmm.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I do the writing, then the thumbnails, then bring it onto uh, the computer and do the rest digitally, all the pencils and all the inks and
And how long have you been in the digital environment when it comes to the?
pretty much my whole quote unquote career. Like since I was, I remember in middle school, my friend who was one of the more talented than me artists, and he was getting into coloring things digitally, and
Okay.
he was into this comic you may remember. It's called Penny Arcade, and it
Oh,
was
for sure. Yeah.
he was crazy about Penny Arcade, and so he wanted to learn how to do that. And as he was learning, I was just right next to him, and he'd get me my copy of Photoshop, and he showed me the multiply layer and
That was everything. It's a multiple.
everything. Yeah, the rest was history. So I've always felt more comfortable digitally, just because there's no mistakes, have no consequence. But in my last few years, I'm starting to gravitate to penciling and inking traditionally, and then doing all my color digitally, because there's just something about the effect you get on a physical page.
Yeah.
Sometimes the accidents produce,
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think it is. The digital tools are amazing, and I love them and I use them,
Mhm.
but they are not. The fidelity is not as good as it is
Absolutely.
with the actual real materials. Um, but I think for the level of when the artwork gets reduced and it's printed,
Mhm.
I don't really think it matters in the end as far as what the product is, but the process is kind of cool.
Mhm.
And I have great nostalgia for sitting at a blank piece of paper and filling it up with art in a day.
I don't know what the term is for that feeling, but I've tried to convey it to my wife a few times. The feeling you get at just a blank white piece of A4 paper.
Yeah.
Just there's something about it.
No, it's a really it's in that just that sense of doing something and making that slice of that world alive, and in that work session is quite a wonderful sort of experience. And then it's not the same that it doesn't happen on a screen. It's just a very different kind of thing. There's this paper under your hand, and and it's not hot. The screens are warm.
Yeah, exactly. And I do sometimes catch myself. I'll be drawing or inking traditionally, and I'll mess up, and my
Oh
my
yeah,
two
our mind.
fingers instinctively
Yeah,
control Z,
yeah.
control Z. Uh,
We all wish we could have that one superpower
oh,
in the real world with all the things that we do. Yeah,
yeah.
it is not. It's this weird thing. Our human brains are easily rewired.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but that's cool. Well, I mean, it's cool that you're kind of mixing both, because it's I mean, I guess Wilfredo said that he's like, I don't really see much of a difference in time between doing it digitally and doing it, by hand
Absolutely.
on paper. So he's like, I just kind of stick with paper, like and I'll just kind of work that route.
And I can't really describe like this. I run into a block sometimes. I noticed after so many years of doing it digitally, and it doesn't happen when I'm digitally painting. If I'm digitally painting, I get that I forget what they call it, but it's like an in the zone feeling.
Mhm.
What we're looking for when we do these things, and but if sometimes when I'm just drawing or inking on a digital surface, I'm not getting something, and I
Huh.
couldn't tell what it was, and so I'm like, well, maybe I'll
It's the
pivot
fear,
back to.
John. It's the fear.
I think it's the fear. I think there's something about knowing, well, I can fix that. Well, I can fix that.
Yeah.
When you're on the tightrope and there's no net,
Yep.
what comes out's a little bit different sometimes.
Yeah.
So, a little more fun at least.
I mean, it's a neater studio with just a computer and a screen.
Yeah.
Much neater environment, and you're not getting splattered with things, and that's okay. And you're not stabbing yourself in the hand.
Oh,
that the mark is there, 40 years later.
Oh my God. Yeah. Mine's a Micron pen.
Yeah. I had this one I think may have been blue pencil. So like, so like I had this blue dot in my hand for, forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey man, it's the pain is real, everyone. This is not a non-contact sport.
We're literally embedded by it.
You will suffer the slings and arrows.
You'll absorb it one way or another.
I don't know. That's cool. So really looking forward to the book or your announcement of the book. I hope you have a really good strategy of like how you're going to roll this out, because
it's all just everything's ready, waiting in the wings for that green light, and then it's all good
on paper.
Yeah
Absolutely. All right, well, that's exciting. Of course I'll be seeing it when you post the stuff on thing, but go follow John on John Osborne Art, all one smashed up word on Instagram. And then you can find a link to his website, which he will update this weekend.
Oh, it'll be up. You won't even know it wasn't updated.
Right.
This so fresh.
Why are they talking about that? I think it's exciting. It's exciting that there's nothing more exciting than somebody taking interest in the things that you do and wanting to be a part of whatever that thing is that you're doing, whether it is someone who chooses to read the thing, to buy it if you're putting it up online, or to publish your works. Like it's really an exciting thing to be part of that process at whatever level it is.
Absolutely. And it's a very unique feeling, it's hard to find. And when you have tasted it, you just like, for the rest of your life. That's all I want.
Totally. Except you want to draw Batman.
So one of these days, it's just a matter of time. I'm gonna get there.
Well, it's the thing is you might end up writing a Batman story. Who knows?
Oh, I'd love to. Man, the golden call would be, we'd like you to do 3 issues of Batman. Do whatever you want. Oh, I'd make him proud. I'd work so hard on it.
That's we all have. The thing is, you just got to keep making those relationships and making the work, undeniable. Like,
absolutely,
you make the work undeniable. There's no people, if they can't say no, then you're going to do it. Yeah, I
agree.
Yep. All right, you good? Was this good? Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, cathartic.
It goes by quick, doesn't it?
And I don't even know how long it's been.
It's been a while.
Wow,
it goes by quick.
Nothing but fun.
I know. All right, John. Thank you for joining me. Find John.
For having me.
Go to John Osborne Art. I'm not going to say any of our doobly-doos because I'm changing that at the moment. So I don't know what to say. Just, hunt us down.
Yeah.
Until next week. And John, peace out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you, brother.
Bye.